You don't want to give them up, do you? Awesome. So we'll continue to keep the music flowing here this year. Thank you, Ruth, for helping us out. That's perfect. I know we ruined your beautiful display up there of drums, which we were just sitting there for a couple weeks, and last week we were sitting up here and we're like, yeah, let's get those drums going. Thank you.
The display of instruments.
Awesome. Yeah, let's read the scripture together, shall we? So Psalm 46 is our text for today. And hopefully something that we can chew on this week, that we can meditate on this week. Did I share that with you last week, that the word meditate means, meditatio means, maybe I didn't share this. It means to chew, right? Yeah, so to chew on things, to kind of let it really simmer. So we're going to do a little similar kind of thing today, but just really immersing ourselves in the psalm for today. But before I dig into the text, I want to tell you a little story about a guy by the name of Horatio Spafford. May you hear about this person? So Horatio Spafford was a lawyer in Chicago in the late 1800s. And he and his family, he and his wife Anna, had 5 children. Wonderful family and doing the family things. But there were no strangers to sadness and tragedy in their lives. Because what had happened in the early years, in the late 1800s, 1870s, they lost a child. A child died to pneumonia, which was a horrible thing back then. A lot of people died. And so I don't know if anybody's ever sort of known somebody, or maybe we ourselves have experienced that kind of a tragic loss. But that was just one thing, and that very same year was the Chicago fire, where his family lost their entire business. Their building burned to the ground. But the Lord provided, and they were able to rebuild and regroup, and though their hearts were broken at the loss of their child, they carried on. Fine, all well and good. Well, in the year 1873, just 2 years later, the family decided to take a trip to Europe. And they were going to load all on the ship and take the ship over to Europe, and they did. But Horatio himself had several business details to tend to, so Anna, his wife, and their 4 children went on ahead in the boat. He was going to come a couple of days later. Well, about 4 days into the journey, the boat that they were on was a French ocean liner with 313 passengers. It was called the Ville de Horde, collided with a Scottish ship and sank into the ocean. Only 12 minutes later, it completely went underwater, taking the lives of 226 of the passengers, including the 4 children. Anna survived. And she, when the rescue ship finally arrived, she was clinging to a piece of wreckage, and they picked her up and took her back to safety. And when she finally got back to the mainland, she sent a telegram to her husband saying what had happened and that she alone had survived. Heartbroken, heart-wrenched, Horatio got aboard the next ocean liner and started traveling to Europe. About 4 days into the journey, the captain of the ship slowed the ship down and said, "This is the place where the ship sank." Heartbroken, filled with remorse, filled with tears, filled with heartbreaking sadness, Horatio Spafford wrote these words. If I was prepared, I would have this already. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, It is well. It is well with my soul. How can somebody write these words after they experience such a horrific tragedy? It's hard to know. We're going to sing this song later as a prayer. But how in the world can we move from human hurt to human hope? What is it that helps us make that move? I mean, we turn on the evening news, or we examine our own lives or the lives of people we know, and we do know of the great suffering that human beings are enduring in these times. It hasn't changed since the 1870s, and we are still no strangers to grief and loss. So how can someone sing, "It is well with my soul," in the midst of all of this? It's probably one of the greatest life's questions. Why the suffering? How can we get to it? The good news is we have a guidebook here. So let's take a look at the psalm, shall we? And maybe this will give us a clue into Horatio Spafford's faith in the midst of crisis. You got it? Psalm 46. And your translations may read a little differently. If so, share some of the differences with us. God is our refuge and strength. God is very present, help in times of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though the waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help. God will help her right early. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. God utters God's voice, and the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how God has wrought desolations in the earth and makes wars to cease to the ends of the earth, breaking the bow, shattering the spear, burning the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted in the nations. I am exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. What do we think of that? I want to invite us to read this psalm sort of sideways, or kind of backwards in a way. And I'd like us to look at our current life situations. And again, just if you turn on the evening news, or in your mind, just whatever news source you use, whether that's internet or television or radio, however you get your news, just think about what's been in the news lately. What are some of the things going on? Well, we won't even talk about North Korea and all that stuff, right? I mean, we have all of this happening. But what else is going down in our the most recent tragedies in our own country, right? Where the devastations from the hurricanes, and this is still something that people are living without power or water or food, and people are helping, right? But again, we look at though the earth should change and the mountains shake and the waters roar and foam, mountains trembling, nations raging, kingdoms tottering. So we look at the news and it's almost like, oh, was this written in the year 2017? So with tottering, raging nations and natural disasters, how can we sing, "It is well with my soul"? Now we got to read in backwards. God is very present in times of trouble. God is our refuge, our safe place, our shelter, our strength. Does anybody's Bible say fortress? This is actually the inspiration for the hymn, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," right? So the word strength is fortress, right? So we have God, our refuge, our strength, very present help in times of trouble. Look down at the end of verse 7. God is our refuge. Look at the very last verse of the psalm. God is our refuge. So what is a refuge but a shelter from the storm? A safe place where we can find not only safety and security, but where we can help bring others into that space. Okay? So I know that life, full of its challenges, can be a very depressing lot, very discouraging at times. And so how can we sing it as well with my soul? Oh, maybe the song doesn't say, "It is well with the world right now. It is well with my life circumstances." Doesn't say that. What's the wellness? Where does that wellness? It is well with my soul because God is my rock. God is my salvation. God is my refuge. God is my fortress. God is my strength. And I'm suspecting here is the key. Very present in times of trouble. So how does God do that? And this is where I'd like a little sharing, and then we'll move into prayer. How is God very present in times of trouble? Does God sort of swoop down from the sky and sort of fix all the devastation that's happening in Florida and Mexico and Texas? I mean, I've never seen that. But how is God present in times of trouble? How is God present for you?
And friends.
Okay, friends. Yeah, so huge. There's one of our greatest sources of refuge and strength. So when we can't quite do it. Yeah, Nick.
In the spring, my parents' house burned down, and you think that would be an utter tragedy. And I went up a couple weeks afterwards to kind of help them sort some stuff out. And my mom said, this has been the best time of our lives. And my brother said the same thing. And you think during this horrific time that it would be really hard for them. But they said, there's been no time in our life that we've felt the presence of God so close. And we go through it again to experience that.
Wow.
And so God can use that tragedy like that to bring him close to us and to bring people closer together.
Yeah, because when things are going our way, we don't quite need God as much, right?
Right.
So, but when stuff like that happens, then we really see the greatest time.
Can I elaborate on what?
Yeah, please.
They found a sign, and they were going to the house, and it said, and it was just a little bit charred. They didn't even know.
Right.
It was just barely charred.
When you think you survive.
God doesn't give us what we can't handle.
Yeah.
God helps us handle what we're handling.
That's an awesome insight. Thank you for sharing that, because that kind of brings something to mind that we may have talked about before, but like how many of us here have ever been through hard times? Oh, yeah. Oh. So, guess what? We have survived 100% of our hard times. Wow! If that isn't a testimony to God's enduring faith and God's strength and God's might and trusting in the God. If God has seen us through 100% of our troubles, don't we think God will continue to see us through the troubles that we're facing right now? All we have to do is trust that God's steadfast love and faithfulness will endure. And so here's the formula. We move from human hurt to human hope by remembering what God has done. This is to emphasize, right? May not remember anything else except Sam was slapping his head. Sometimes I need something bigger. wake me up and remind me that we move from our hurt and our struggles to hope and refuge because God has been faithful throughout our lives, will continue to be faithful in the future. By the way, Horatio Spafford and his wife, in the midst of their grief, settled in Europe and eventually ended up moving to Jerusalem, interesting enough. And they had 3 more children, and they carried on with their lives, and their life was, again, full and productive moving forward. Never got over the loss, but life went on in a positive way. So why don't we go ahead and look at that hymn and sing this together and think not only of the amazing story of Horatio Spafford, but how he was moved in his life to finally offer God his praise, even when this tragedy. Oh, looky there at the bottom. Text by Horatio G. Spafford. So you know I'm not making the story up.